Hello, we're back. What we're going to do is we're going to complete our serialization and organization of the different types of game objects. So I know that was a little vague. So what I mean by that is I have scriptable objects in this project, and scriptable objects are very similar to like a piece of JSON that's persistent. So it has information regarding objects in the game that may not have a game object attached to them. Then I have instances of these scriptable objects, which are called mono behaviors. And those are actual game objects in the game. Okay. Now, scriptable objects have some information on them. They're basically a template. Okay. So on my server, I'm storing this information about these blocks and things as a scriptable object. So if we look over here in the back end, we're going to make a new folder in here called Scriptable Objects. And in this, I'm going to put block, gem, board, color, draw piece, game object, gem chance, piece, rewards, and round. Now, I need to have a new folder called instances, because I want to start tracking how these things get generated in the game so that I could have a history with them. So what I mean by that is if I look over here in the front end, and I look inside of, for example, my models folder, here I have two folders now, one called Scriptable Objects and one called Instances. Just a second. So we'll move these out to here. And then we'll move these ones in. So if I look at how these are connected here, a scriptable object DTO would be the same information that's in a scriptable object, except it's been pared down so it doesn't have all of the logic in it, and it takes some of these other fields that are attached to it. No, not these things, because these are working ephemeral data. So the board instance is different. It has a link to the board scriptable object, and then the lines that are in it and the draw pieces that are in it. So we're going to continue this pattern. The first one I want to look at would be my player and my player IDs. We're going to do my tier IDs and my round IDs. Okay? So in the game, where are we going to do this? I don't want to do this at the beginning of the game. Let's do it at the I don't want to do this at the end, so let's do it at the beginning. So in my global manager, what I want to do is we're going to get the payload, and then we're going to start our connection. And now I want to have a new event here. Well, this is where you're currently subscribing it. So let's do it here, not in the global manager. And what I want to do is down here in my game, I'm passing in a scriptable object, and I'm adding to my JSON array a JSON utility.toJSON of my new game DTO. Bitterar says, this sounds cool. Thanks, man. How are you doing today? And our ID here is going to be my instance ID. My object type is a game. Your round IDs are your player IDs are your c.players.select the ID from them. The rounds are the IDs of the rounds. And the tiers just one second. And the tier IDs are going to be c.tiers.select the ID. .toArray. Now this one won't work because this doesn't have tiers. So if I look at the game DTO, I can get rid of these three things. And if I look at my object types now, we're going to change these to be a block instance DTO, block gem instance DTO, board gem instance, and we can save some typing here. And I have to have both of these because I have the templates, which are already sent to the server. What's the JSON for? So I'm using an ASP.NET Web API 3.1 on the back end. The way that the game works is that when you connect first to the authorization server, you get a token. You download your payload of information, which are the game objects in the game. That would be the scriptable objects, right? And then it updates all of the properties in the game, and then it will allow you to play multiplayer. When you're in multiplayer, it first connects you to a TCP server, and the TCP server is like the matchmaking server, and then it introspects the token to make sure that it's valid. And then if it is, it lets you in. And it's a persistent connection, and then in there, I have a couple of different choices. I can use binary, right, to transport the data from the server to the client, but there's sometimes with that, it's hard to maintain some of the historic data. So I'm instead just going to allow a little overhead. I'm using regular TCP for the transport protocol, and then we're going to just transfer things in JSON that I'm going to encode in UTF-8 and then convert it into bytes and then send that across. So it's for persistent game data, and so the game's got like a multiplayer aspect similar to TFT. You can give it a try here. It's got a free link right now where people can give it a try and see what they think of the game. Let me know what you think. Probably takes a little bit because I have a bunch of assets in there right now. So in this game DTO, I don't need anything else other than these things. Okay? And this is a game instance DTO. Okay. And let's add some stuff onto it. So let's add a player. So JSONs dot add a JSON utility dot to JSON. We're going to create a new, and it's going to be a player DTO. Now you've got two choices here. You've got a instance and a match player, and then a player. So we'll change this later, but for now we can use it with a So let's not do player yet. We need to fix that. Let's instead do round. So JSONs.add a JSON utility.to JSON a new round DTO. And that's going to have a game ID, which is my, in my round SO, I need to set the game ID in here. So in your round SO, when you do your init, we also want to have one which is called a public virtual void set game. And it's a game SO called game. And we'll just say it's a protected game. And then we'll add it down here as a public game SO game, and I'll return the game. Okay, we need to set that. So in my scriptable objects for the it's in my base game manager. When you go to a create game, you're initting your players and your game, and then you create the tiers, and then in the game you're going to this next round, so we're going to do round.setGame the round. Sorry, this. Okay, so now that that's set, this is my c.game.id. We don't have the matches IDs at this point, right? Because I'm only sending the one game. Come on, come on. There we go. So we can get rid of this one in these two. And this one's going to be a round SOID is my C dot ID, and my ID is the C dot instance ID. We might as well do one more while we're here. So we'll do a match, which is a match DTO. And that's going to have on it a board IDs, which we don't know. We don't know the lines. I do know the opponent, the round, and the match ID. That needs to be called match SO ID. And that's going to be your C.ID. Your object type is a match. Oh, we didn't add that here, did we? Round instance. And this is a match instance. And the opponent ID is the C.opponent. Does not equal to null. Then it's C.opponent. .id, otherwise it's just going to be a string.empty. And the round is a C.round.id. And the ID is C.instance ID. Okay, let's start with those. We want to add on here a round instance DTO and a match instance DTO. And then in my match SO, I want to add a new public round SO called round. And we'll add that up here. And then we're also going to have a public virtual void set round. So when you're going to the next board, when you're going to the next match, oh, come on. Match current. In your round current, when you go to the next match, I can do a match.setRound to this. Okay. So now in my TCP manager, this is to send the data. And then it does it in this message struct here. And I can just send anything I want. So what I want to do then is look at my global manager. Let's go to my base game manager. And after we do a start scene, I want to do a task.run. And what I want to do is a TCP manager dot send message asynchronous, and this just is a type of this is just a type of base scriptable object. There is no T. And all I want to send here is my well, let's do it for an individual one. So I want to say public static asynchronous task send initial send game round match initial. And this will just be a game SO called game. And now what you want to have is a list of scriptable objects. Hey there, Unity3d. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. I like your screen name. This is going to be a base scriptable object. And so what I want to do here, we're going to just cascade this down, called send round asynchronous. Or we can do this as a prep round asynchronous, and then a prep match asynchronous. So we're going to call these round instance, game instance, and so what you want to do here is this is going to be a match SO. And all you want to return here is an I collection of match DTO. Of just one of these. Okay, let's do it a different way. We'll put these in the scriptable objects themselves. So in the game, I'm going to have one called a prepare DTO, which we can just call a virtual game DTO, prepare DTO. Prepare instance DTO. Okay. And this is going to return a new game DTO to, which is the ID here, and the object type, which is a game DTO. Okay, we're going to do the same one on reward. This is a reward DTO. Sorry, this is a, not this one. Sorry, I meant to put this on a round SO. This is a round DTO. And your game instance here is game.id. Okay. The next one is a match. And that's a match DTO. Your match SO equals your ID. Your ID is your instance.id. Your opponent is your, if your opponent does not equal to null, then you want to return your opponent.id. Else you want to do a string.empty. Your round ID is round.id. Okay, let's go back real quick because I think round needs to have this ID as the instance ID. And this is your ID. And your game needs to have a public enum game type. And we currently have free play, practice, and battle. So this needs to have a protected game type called game type. And we're going to add that in right here. Like this. And then when we prepare this game DTO, I want to say this has a game type on it. My codes are very simple compared to these. This is God level coding. What do you mean? No, that's not bad. Making things simple is always a really good way to maintain stuff. I wish a lot of the stuff that I have worked in my career had been done more simply. Okay. So this base game type, we want to add in here a game type called game type. So we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to do a protected abstract game type called get game type. And that way we'll get it from the, because I don't know what the game type is for this. So now in this start scene, I want to look at my TCP manager here. And what I should be able to do is ascend a game instance. And I want to do, we want to add one of these in here called the game. And then for each of our round in my game.rounds. This needs to be of a base DTO. And now this is a get prepare instance DTO. And then for each one of these, I want to do scriptable objects.add a round.prepare instance DTO. And then for each one of my match in my round.matches, if I look at my round, I only have match current, so let's add the whole match SOs called matches. I want to do scriptable objects.add match.prepare instance DTO. And in here, we're going to pass in an I collection of base DTO called DTOs. And then we're going to do the same thing for this one. Like that. None of this is asynchronous. Five. And all that's going to do is add in this dtos.add my round.prepare instance ID. And then I also want to do for each var match in round.matches. I want to do prep match instance asynchronous of my match and then my DTOs. Again, this one is not asynchronous. DTO stands for data transfer object, so it's something that I'm serializing and sending to my server. So I have scriptable objects, I have scriptable objects instances, and then I have DTOs, which are data transfer objects, and those are both for scriptable objects or instances. Okay, we're going to make these private statics. And then all I'm going to do here is my DTOs dot add my match dot prepare instance DTO. So in here now, we can So now what that means is in match I can do my prepare. It was match prepare match instance of my C and then my DTOs here. So instead we're going to say var DTO match DTOs equals a new list of base DTO, and this is only temporary. And then we're going to prepare this with my match DTOs. And then for each one of them in match DTOs, I want to add the JSON of that item. Okay, we're going to rinse and repeat this for the game. This is going to be called prep game instance. And then the last one here is the round. No problem. Hey, that's awesome. That means that you're a subscriber, doesn't it, NGenXX? Okay. And now the last one here is the round. And this is going to be prep round instance. Oh, I unlock it with channel points. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. And this is a base DTO. And then you're going to send this whole thing to the server, okay? So if I look at where it's being called right now, you're doing it for this payload of blocks on piece placed. So I don't want to do that right now. Instead, what I want to do is go to my base game manager. And after we start the scene, I want to send the games. Okay, I'm going to change this. Sorry, that's why I was rubbing my eyes. If I look at my game SO, we're going to make this a base DTO array. And we'll just do this. You're just going to add this new one. And then for each var round and rounds, you want to get your round.prepare instance DTO, which needs to be an array of these things, base DTO. And then round DTOs dot for each. We'll just do a for I goes to my round DTOs dot length. I want to do a DTOs dot add my round DTOs of I. And then that's it. We're going to return here the DTOs dot to array. Okay, we're going to do the same thing now in round. I hope you guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm moving the logic for this so that it cascades and I can just send an individual object. So in this, when I do a var DTOs equals a new list of base DTO, and then I can add this new round. And then for each var match and matches, I want to get my round DTOs is a match.prepare instance DTOs, which we're going to change this to be a S. And then a base DTO. This is going to be a new base DTO array, which we're going to include this new match. Okay, I'm lost in code space. And then we're going to do a for I that goes to my round DTOs.length, DTOs.add my round DTOs of I, and we can just do a return DTOs.toArray. This is a match DTOs now. Okay, so that'll work for now. Which means I don't need to worry about this anymore. because now we're going to send this I'm only going to send one scriptable object at a time right now. Like that. I'm only adding this so I don't break stuff. This is going to all change. Not this one. So with this one, all I want to do is my C dot prepare instance DTOs. I'm going to add that back. That was fine. Okay. So this is going to be your C.instance DTOs. And then you want to do a game DTOs.for each. So a for I goes to my game DTOs.length. I want to do a JSONs.add my JSON utility.toJSON of my game DTOs of I. This is going to be almost the same thing. This one's going to be called match DTOs. And this one's going to be called round DTOs. Like that. And then you're going to send all that data. All right, I think we're good there. Which means that when we finally do my send message asynchronous here, all we need to do is pass in my game. Now, I would dare say that I actually want to do this as a array of base DTO. Because I want to get this stuff synchronously. What I mean by that is that I'm going to open a new thread when I call the asynchronous thing, but the game could change in that time. So I want to create the DTOs before that happens. So now that I have the JSONs, I just do DTOs for I goes to my DTOs.length. I do a JSONs.add a DTOs, a JSON utility.toJSON of my DTOs of I. And then I finally send it down here. And so here we're going to say var DTOs equals my game.prepare instance DTOs. Now I have a straight copy of them, and I can do it right there. One more thing before I run this. If I look under my models for DTOs, they're classes because they have inheritance. That's okay. Okay? Let's give it a run. So when I look at the back end, I should see this data come in pretty clearly. I'm probably going to have a couple more errors on the front end. That's fine. That's fine. If I look at the other one, this wants me to implement get game type, which is a return practice. Same with this one. The free play. Practice. Don't you have a battle one too? Now your battle has a different start scene. So we'll just add this at the bottom here. And then you also want to do a protected override get game type. And all I want to return here is my game type.battle. Okay. Looks good. Back in Unity, we can see the servers running. The back end's running. Okay, that's the connection. So it wasn't connected yet, is what happened. So let's go back to title. Wait for it to connect. And then we want to do free play. Here's the JSONs. But then it says it disconnected when it changed. So if I look at my TCP manager, my global manager disposed. Why is it disconnecting me when it goes between scenes? The second it changes scenes, it's disconnecting me. Am I losing the global manager? Still looks here. Let's see what's happening here. T. Waiting for this to connect. It's sent. I wonder why it's not attaching. Wait for it to attach. Well, I'm going to cheat. We're just going to do old school debugging if this is still cranking. Which it is. So let's just halt this. We'll add down here on my service. Ah, crap. Not this one. I want to add down here on this one a debug.log disposing. So did it break? No, there it is. So when we go to the next scene, should connect here. Yep, there it is. Disposing. Okay, so it's disposing because it's inheriting from a base mono behavior. So let's try that again. I use ASP.NET, and then I write my own servers. So I'm using TCP and HTTP for this one. I really should be doing it with UDP and a custom header, but I'm lazy. So it is. It's calling that when it's getting destroyed because the singleton's trying to bring it in a second time. So if I look at this again, if I go to my free play and I delete the global manager, hey there, Fallen Hope, how are you, man? He's running it on a potato. Okay, you got to try free play. Connected. That time it didn't do it. Which means but then even when you go back to the title scene, it's going to fail again. And disconnect you. Because otherwise it's not going to stop the connection before it closes. But because it's got the singleton on it, then you're going to have two of them. The alternative is that you make a TCP so on the singleton, on awake is when you're destroying it. So it won't even ever get to the start. Which means that here I'm going to have a prefab called a public TCP manager prefab. Second. Okay, that'll work. So up here we're going to add a new folder called networking. And this is going to be called HTTP script, and another one called TCP script. We want that to be a type of singleton of its own type. And then I want to have on the awake, I want to have the destroy on scene load I want this to be a type of base manager. The hell is it? Destroy on scene change. And that's false. And this one's going to be called a TCP script. So this will be a mono behavior. That doesn't inherit from base here, so it won't destroy. Let's make it a base manager. That's a better choice. Because then this... No, it does have all that from this destroy logic. And then all you're going to do here is a public virtual void start connection. And then a public virtual void stop connection. And then a public override dispose. So if I look at the global manager, this is where I'm going to start my connection. This is a asynchronous task. So this is going to be an await. Now what I want to do is I want to have a protected TCP I could just create this as a instantiate. And I want to do that with a public TCP script called TCP script, and then the same with the HTTP script. We'll call these prefabs. Like that. And then all I want to do is await my TCP.start connection asynchronous. So up here, it's going to be await TCP manager dot stop connection asynchronous. And that's it. Now it's managed. And then we want the same, almost the same thing on the HTTP one. Which is called HTTP script. And this will be called get payload asynchronous. So you're going to say var HTTP equals your HTTP equals instantiate your HTTP script, and then you're going to do an await HTTP dot get payload asynchronous. That should do it. So in the game, my global manager, we want to make that a prefab. So let's edit this prefab. And I want to make a new game object called TCP, and then another one called HTTP. We'll add one in here, a new folder called networking. Okay, we're going to open up the global and drag in the HTTP and the TCP. And then we're going to go look at title and free play. Practice, oops. Practice is good, free play needs it. And then back over here into title. Okay, let's go back. I don't ever see it. Oh, it needs to create the TCP one when it connects. Let me do it again. Looks like it never got the payload. Let's look at the back end here. Yeah, here it is. There's our payload. We got code 200. Oh, it's because you can't instantiate that in Global Manager. You can't instantiate this. On the other thread. So what I want to do is I want to have a flag here called private bool has received payload, and we want to say protected virtual void update. If it has received payload, and here you want to have a private HTTP script, TCP script called TCP script prefab. It has received payload and the TCP script prefab is equal to null, then we want to do this. Okay, that's good. And then here you want to do a task.run of this async where you start this next thread. Let's try it again. There's our TCP manager. It says connected. Oops, I know what's wrong. It's doing that because here, let's go ahead and kill this so all resources come back. Because up here, it's this one. Okay, we'll let it load. I think it's still thinking over here. There we go. Waiting for the identity server to click on. All right. Try it again. Still doesn't want to connect yet, eh? Let me check this. Let's kill this back end. Kill this. Start back up the back end again. Wait for it to start. Okay, that's 1. That's 2. The server's running. HTTP is running. We should receive it. There's TCP. Should say connected. Now when we go to open play, we can see it sent the JSON and we received it. And it didn't disconnect me. But when I close it, it does disconnect me. So now it's working right. Okay. So on the server side now, we're passing over these objects, right? Now, I currently have it set up with a custom deserializer, okay? So what I mean by that is in the TCP server, I'm actually deserializing these and then going through the enumerators. Now there's another way I could do this where we use a converter in Newtonsoft and it will just do it for me. So we could do this if we wanted, just to take a look at what we're getting from the server. So the first thing that I want to look at here is well, let's take a break, okay? I've been going for 2.5 hours. Take a 15-minute break. When we come back, we'll implement this JSON converter, and then we'll clean this up and start saving these objects to the database. I'll see you guys in just a little bit. Enjoy the music.